Welcome to Narayana IAS Academy. This is Sureka Bhaskar presenting to you the Daily News Analysis. So for today's discussion, we've picked up a number of articles from The Hindu and the Indian Express which are both important and relevant for the UPSC CSE examination. Now let us have a look at the topics one by one. The first article for the day has been picked up from page number 1 of The Hindu, 122 dead as landslides flatten Wayanad villages. So in this particular article, we will be discussing about the heavy rainfall in the state of Kerala, in particular the district of Wayanad, which has actually triggered a series of landslides that actually led to widespread destruction as well as multiple deaths. So for the takeaway for our examination is that we'll be discussing about what are landslides, what are the types, the causes, the vulnerability zones in India, as well as the potential mitigation strategies. The second article has been picked up from page number 11 of the Indian Express, The Not Young. So in this particular article, we will be discussing about the aging population in India and the gaps and challenges they actually face with respect to their access in the healthcare, the pensions, as well as the social services. So here we'll be discussing about what are the policy changes and the interventions that are actually required in order to address these challenges as India becomes an aging society. The third article has been picked up from page number 15 of The Hindu. RBI lays down framework to classify willful defaulters. So as the title suggests, in this particular article, we'll be discussing about the recently launched framework by the Reserve Bank of India in order to classify the willful defaulters. The fourth article has been picked up from page number 8 of The Hindu, option or stratagem. So in this particular article, we will be discussing about the powers of the governor to refer bills to the President of India. The last article for the day has been picked up from page number 13 of the Indian Express. Dementia has two new risk factors. One is untreated vision loss and number 2 is high cholesterol, Lancet study. So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about this particular concept or the disease of dementia, its causes, symptoms, as well as the prevention. And towards the end of the session, we'll be solving few prelims as well as the mains practice questions. And now let us get into the discussion. The first article that we'll be discussing for the day is 122 dead as landslides flatten the villages of Wayanad. So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about the heavy rainfall in the state of Kerala, especially the district of Wayanad, which had actually triggered a series of landslides that was characterized by multiple deaths as well as mass destruction. So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about what is the concept of landslides, what are the types of landslides, what actually causes it, as well as the associated and the potential mitigation strategies that India actually has to adopt in order to deal with this particular geophysical phenomena. Now moving forward, let us actually discuss on the relevance of this particular topic. Here we'll be discussing about landslides as it forms an important part of disaster management. And this entire topic can actually map to GS paper 3 for the mains examination under disaster management, environmental pollution, as well as degradation. Now moving forward, if you see the previous year question, there was a question which was asked in the mains examination in the year 2021 with respect to that of the causes and the effects of the landslides. So from here, the takeaway is that all the geophysical phenomena like the earthquake, the landslide, tsunami, etc., the associated causes, the consequences, as well as the disaster management strategies become very, very important specifically for your mains examination. Now let us understand what this particular article is discussing about. So, heavy rainfall in Kerala's Wayanad district had actually triggered a series of landslides that led to multiple deaths as well as widespread destruction. So moving forward, it is important for us to understand the concept of landslides as well as the different types of it. So a landslide is nothing but it is a mass movement of material such as the rock, the earth or the debris down a slope. So when there is a slope, then there is a mass movement of rocks, the earth or the debris that is called as a landslide. And this can actually either happen suddenly or more slowly over longer periods of time. And if you see, when the force of gravity acting on a slope exceeds the resisting forces of a slope. So when the gravity actually exceeds the amount of resistance that is actually given by the slope, then the slope will fail and a landslide will occur. And external factors can also actually lead to landslide. So here we've actually understood what this landslide is all about. Now, what is important for us is to understand what are the different types of landslides, as you can actually see in this particular image. The first type is the rotational landslide. Here, what do you mean by the rotational landslide is, here the ground actually rotates and slides along a curved failure plane, okay? So here there is a rotation of the ground and then it actually slides along a failure plane. The next one is actually called as a translational landslide. Here it is nothing but the ground slides with little rotation along a flat plane which is parallel to the surface. If you see at this particular GIF, you can understand. And the third one is a block slide. The name itself actually suggests that a type of translational landslide which is actually mostly made up of blocks of material or the surface material that actually moves down slope. The next one is the rock fall. What do you mean by rock fall? Here, the gravity actually sends the rocks and other material that actually tumbles down the downslope. The next one is topple. This actually means the pieces of rock or the cliff of a rock will actually fall towards the large blocks. This is called as the toppling landslide. The next one is the earth flow. This is nothing but form on moderate slopes when fine-grained material, this actually liquefies, okay? When there is fine-grained material because of heavy rainfall, that actually liquefies. What happens? And when this is, happening on a form of moderate slope, what happens? Fine-grained material liquefies and it actually runs out in the shape of the hourglass, okay? Moving on, the next one is the lateral spread. This is nothing but when the surface material extends or spreads on the gentle slope. There is a spread of material that is called as the lateral spread. And this type of ground deformation is often associated with the shaking of the earth. That is, when it is preceded by earthquake, this kind of landslide actually happens. The next one is debris flow. Here there is a rapid movement of water, mud, trees and other materials that flow down valley and can actually travel over great distances. So this is called as a debris flow kind of a landslide. The next one is debris avalanche. This is nothing but an extremely large and fast moving debris flow. And the last one is creep, which is nothing but the soil and the surface material that slowly move down a slope. So these are the different types of landslides. Now it is important for us to understand what are the causes of landslides, following which we will actually analyze what can be the possible reasons for the cause of landslides in the district of Wayanad. So the natural factors actually include, the first is heavy rainfall. When there is intense as well as prolonged period of rainfall, this can trigger the landslides because that will increase the pore water pressure within the soil and this will actually collapse the slope. Okay, so that actually leads to the slope failure and consequently the landslide. Next one is seismic activity. As we discussed, earthquakes can cause the landslides by shaking as well as destabilizing the slopes. Next is the melting of snow. Here, the rapid melting of snow can actually saturate the soil and then it actually leads to the landslides. And also because of volcanic eruption, it can take place because deposition of loose volcanic ash on the hillsides commonly is followed by accelerated erosion and frequent mud or the debris flow triggered by intense rainfall. Now moving forward, let us actually look at the anthropological factors that are actually contributing to landslides. First is deforestation, where there is excessive removal of the vegetation cover. This reduces the stability of the slopes, thereby making them more susceptible to the landslides. Next one is rapid urbanization or unplanned construction, you can say. So construction activities, particularly in the hilly areas, can actually destabilize the slopes and can trigger this process of landslides. Next is mining activities. This can actually weaken the structural integrity of the slopes, increasing the risk of landslides. And the next one is construction of the roads, where the process of blasting as well as digging for the road construction can also destabilize the slopes. Now moving forward, let us actually see what could be the possible reasons behind the landslides in Wayanad. First one is continuous heavy rainfall. Here, persistent rainfall over several days would have actually softened the soil, making it unstable and prone to landslides. The second is maybe the loss of forest cover, because there has been reports which actually says that there has been replacement of the natural forest with different kind of plantation crops like coffee, tea, etc., which have weaker root systems that fail to hold the soil effectively and firmly. Next one is the effect of climate change. The monsoon has been very erratic. One was actually characterized by very dry spells. Next one is very heavy rains as well as flash floods, etc. So, erratic monsoon patterns and increased rainfall intensity linked to the climate change has also exacerbated this particular landslide event. Next one is human intervention, such as the construction of roads as well as quarrying and the deforestation activities, which has actually weakened the hillsides and would have contributed to the instability of the soil. The next is that there could be lack of implementation of the ecological recommendations that had been made by the Gadgil Committee, which was actually set up for the preservation of the Western Ghats. So here it becomes very, very important. So, failure to enforce the recommendations by the Gadgil panel as well as the Kasturi Rangan Committee in order to declare the Western Ghats areas as eco-sensitive zones and restrict the harmful activities would have been the problem. If you see, Gadgil Committee had recommended declaring 75% of the Western Ghats around 1,29,000 square kilometers as ecologically sensitive areas, whereas the Kasturi Rangan Committee scaled down this particular eco-sensitive areas coverage to 50% of the Western Ghats. Now moving forward, if you actually see what had actually the series of events that had happened in the district of Wayanad, here multiple landslides actually hit Wayanad on the 30th of July 2024. And it actually occurred around 2 a.m. on Tuesday. These are just facts that you need to know what had happened. And over 100 and plus people had actually killed and several gone missing. And hundreds were stranded in the area. The next one is the small towns such as the Churalmala as well as the Mundakai had actually been surrounded by hills and plantations. And both were the locations of tourist attractions, and also several resorts and homestays are located here. So this portion of Wayanad was actually affected. Now moving forward, let us actually see what is the vulnerability, that is landslide vulnerability of India. So if you see, around 13% of India's area, which is actually spread over 15 states and 4 union territories, is prone to the landslides. And also based on the incidents, the landslide zones are classified into 3 zones. One is actually the northwestern Himalayas, if you actually see in this particular tabular column. Next is northeastern Himalayas, and the next one is the Western Ghats. So first is the northwestern Himalayas, which actually includes 66%, that is percentage of incidence of landslides is over 66% over here, which actually include areas of Jammu and Kashmir, then Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Sikkim, as well as the northern parts of West Bengal. The reason here is that the young and the fragile geology of the Himalayas, and along with it there is heavy rainfall and also seismic zones or seismic activity, makes this region extremely prone to the landslides. The next one, as we discussed, it's the northeastern Himalayas, where it is prone to 18.8%, including the states of Arunachal Pradesh, Assam, Manipur, Meghalaya, Mizoram, Nagaland, as well as Tripura. And also, here it is because of high rainfall, steep slopes, as well as seismic activity that contribute to frequent landslides in the region. The next one is Western Ghats, and here the region that is 14.7%, that is the Konkan coast, besides Nilgiris, is actually covered here, which includes the states of Maharashtra, Goa, Karnataka, Kerala, as well as the state of Tamil Nadu. Here, it is because of heavy monsoon rains as well as human activities like the deforestation and construction. This would have increased the vulnerability to landslides. In the Nilgiris, it is actually due to heavy rainfall and the steep terrain. And so, if you actually look at this particular map, you can actually see this is the landslide inventory of India. You can see these yellow marked regions actually include the Western Ghats landslide province, and towards the eastern Himalayas, you can actually see these areas and states of Arunachal Pradesh, Manipur, etc. And this actually includes Uttarakhand, that is the northwestern Himalayan landslide province. The next article that we'll be discussing about is the not young. So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about the aging population in India, and also this article actually discusses about as India transcends or it becomes an aging society, there have been significant gaps that the elderly actually face with respect to that of their access to health, to the social security, as well as the other services. Okay. So, in this article, we'll be discussing about the aging population who are a part of the vulnerable sections of the population, which is, relevant for your GS paper 2. And also, we can actually map this topic to GS paper 2 mains examination, welfare schemes for the vulnerable sections of the population. Now, moving forward, if you see, all the vulnerable sections of this population, specifically if you see the elderly population, women, children, disabled, etc., will actually come in your mains examination. And such a question is that in 2013, there was a question in the mains examination with respect to effects of globalization on the aged population. So we need to know about, what is the current status of aging population in India, what are the several measures that have been taken by the government in order to improve their security, that is social security, healthcare, etc. We'll need to discuss. And also the various, schemes associated becomes very important for your prelims examination. Now let us understand what this particular article is discussing about. So the article highlights the need for immediate attention and policy intervention as the aging population in India is facing a lot of challenge and significant gaps in their access to the pension, healthcare services as well as the social care. So let us have an overview or the status of the aging population in India. So in India, the senior citizens, who are referred to as those people who are aged 60 years and above, currently comprise a little over 10% of the population, which is around 104 million. And according to the UNFPA, that is the United Nations Population Fund, this population of around 104 million will actually increase to around 319 million, that is 19.5% of the population by the year 2050. And also, if you see, the total dependency ratio that this population will actually have on the younger working age population, which stood at 56.92 in the year 2020. This is projected to decrease actually steadily till 2025 due to the rise in the working age population, but it is expected to rise again and touch around 61.22% by the year 2050. Now, if you actually see the rapid aging process, and if you actually compare it to the other countries, it is comparable to the trends that is observed in East as well as Southeast Asian countries, which have experienced faster aging compared to that of the Western nations. And also, within India, there are also regional variation, whereas there are higher elderly population concentration in southern states and also in Himachal Pradesh and Punjab compared to that of the national average. So, if you look at this particular infographic, we see the percentage of population over here, as well as the population by the broad age groups in percentage over here from the period of 1950 to 2050, and years along the x-axis and percentage along the y-axis. So, you can actually see here that the dependency ratio, it is actually set to decrease and then it will actually increase subsequently. Now moving forward, let us see what are the key observations the author makes in this particular article with respect to elderly population in India and the challenges or the gaps they actually face. First, it is mentioned that the proportion of the older persons in India is projected to increase significantly. That is, it was 8.6% of the population in 2011 and it is set to increase to around 21% by 2050. And also, as we said, there are regional variation, where there is, interstate variations like southern states and some northern states like Himachal and Punjab report higher share of the elderly population. And also there is a rapid aging process that is taking place, which is comparable to that of East and South Asian countries, where there is rapid occurring. This process is actually occurring in a span of 20 to 30 years when compared to that of hundreds of years in the Western countries. Now moving forward, there are also socio-economic disparities, in the age or the old age population in accessing the healthcare services, the financial security as well as the social care services based on the socio-economic status and geographic location. Very, very important. And if you see, why do I mention geographic location? Because the elderly in the rural areas often depend more on the family support, which is not always sufficient or reliable. Next one. There is a lack of universal social pension scheme. As we know, there is no one particular or universal standard pension scheme for the elders, and also existing schemes are limited and often targeted to those below the poverty line, that is the BPL population, leaving many elder individuals without adequate financial support. Moving forward, if you see the health insurance coverage, you have schemes like the Ayushman Bharat, but these are also limited to the individuals who lie below the poverty lines. And also we have other schemes like the Central Government Health Scheme, that is the CGHS, and the Employment State Insurance Scheme. These also cover only the government employees as well as those in the organized sector. So here again the elderly population in the unorganized sector are excluded. And also we also saw this dimension of dependency on the family support. So the burden of providing care for the elderly often falls on the family members. So there are economic pressures on the younger family members and migration for work. This further exacerbates the issue, leading to financial as well as emotional stress. And also, the prevalence of the NCDs, that is the non-communicable diseases, that actually increase with age, and this complicates the daily living activities, and this requires comprehensive care. That is why we need policy changes as well as interventions by the government. Next, there is also lack of institutional support. So if you see, institutional support for elderly care is underdeveloped in India, whereas if you see the Eastern and Southeast Asian countries, India actually lacks well-established retirement communities and long-term care facilities that are actually, very well developed and well structured and implemented in the East. Moving forward, let us actually quickly look into what are the key challenges and issues around the senior care in India. So we've actually broken this down into 4, that is the health issues, the social inclusion, the economic inclusion, as well as the digital inclusion. If we start with the health inclusion, there is lack of comprehensive and integrated health package for the services, and also elderly care infrastructure gap is there. There is paucity of trained manpower, there is limited financing of the care for the elderly, and inadequate emergency response infrastructure is there. There is insufficient focus on hygiene related issues. And if you see social inclusion, there is actually fragmented and narrow social support system, very limited awareness regarding the rights and the provisions available. They do not have proper social support. There is social inequality as such. There is inadequate elderly friendly infrastructure, and also there is contribution and challenges of the care workers have been neglected. And if you see the digital inclusion, there is actually need to ensure digital literacy because there is already insufficient access to digital goods, and also paucity of digital training modules for the elderly. And even if it is available, it actually becomes unaffordable, okay? And there is limited broadband connections. Next, if you see economic inclusion or that particular dimension, there is need for universal and comprehensive financial system for the old age security. Also, there is financial abuse as well as fraud, as well as deficient support in lifetime financial planning. And finally, insufficient levels of financial literacy is actually prevailing among the elderly population. Now, towards the end, we need to understand what are the various initiatives that have been brought about by the government in order to take care or adhere to the challenges and the gaps that the elderly population face in India. The first such initiative is the PMVVY, that is Pradhan Mantri Vaya Vandana Yojana, which provides assured pension or return to the senior citizen through Life Insurance Corporation, that is the LIC, offering an assured return of 8% per annum for 10 years. And also you have the IPOP, that is nothing but Integrated Program for the Older Persons, which improves the quality of life of the senior citizens by providing basic amenities like food, shelter, medical care, and entertainment opportunities. The next one is Sacred Portal for the Elderly. This has actually been brought about by the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, which actually provides job opportunities for the citizens above the age of 60 years. Next is the SAGE, which stands for Senior Care Aging Growth Engine Initiative. This actually gives the elderly care products and services by credible startups supporting entrepreneurship in the field of elderly care. And finally, we have the Elder Line or the toll-free number, which provides information, guidance and emotional support to the seniors, particularly on the pension, medical and legal issues, alongside immediate assistance in case of any kind of abuse that is reported. The next article that we'll be discussing about is Reserve Bank of India has laid down framework in order to classify the willful defaulters. So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about what is this particular framework and what provisions does it actually uphold in order to classify the willful defaulters. Before that, we'll understand who are the willful defaulters and what are the implications they actually face if they do so. So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about this concept of willful defaulter, and we can actually map this particular topic to prelims as well as mains GS paper 3. Indian economy and issues relating to planning, mobilization of resources, growth, development, employment, etc. As well as it forms a part of GS paper 4, determinants as well as consequences of ethics in human actions. Okay. And moving forward, if you actually see the previous year question, there has been a question asked in the year 2012 in the prelims examination with respect to that of the Reserve Bank of India. So any kind of framework, any kind of draft regulations that these kind of institutions actually bring in becomes very important. Similarly, the rate cuts, the repo rates, etc. are very important for both the prelims as well as the mains examination. Now let us understand what this particular article is discussing about. So the Reserve Bank of India has issued stringent guidelines and procedures for the lenders to identify and handle with these willful defaulters. So let us understand who is a willful defaulter. Okay. So a willful defaulter is actually an individual or an entity that intentionally avoids repaying the loans despite having the financial ability to do so. So despite having enough money to repay the loans that you have actually borrowed, if you don't pay, you are termed as a willful defaulter, and the defaulters can either be an individual or an entity. So this includes diverting the funds, siphoning off the funds, or disposing of the collateral assets without the consent of the lender. Next one, if you see, according to the Reserve Bank of India, the classification applies to the borrowers or the guarantors with outstanding amounts of rupees 25 lakhs or more. Now moving forward, let us actually see what are the consequences of being declared a willful defaulter. If a person or an entity is declared as a willful defaulter, what are all the consequences the person or an entity will actually face? First one, restricted access to credit, that is, willful defaulters are barred from obtaining further bank finance, and this actually significantly hinders their ability to conduct future business activities. The second one is legal actions and penalties. Here, the banks and financial institutions actually initiate stringent legal proceedings against the willful defaulters, which can include criminal charges as well as expedite the foreclosure processes to recover the dues under various laws such as the SARFAESI Act, the Companies Act, as well as the Fugitive Economic Offenders Act. So these are the legal implications they will face. Apart from that, they will be forced for public disclosure as well as reputational damage. That is, the names of willful defaulters are made public, which severely damages their reputation and credibility within the finance as well as the business community. So this will actually hamper their further business activities as well, or getting into agreements with other companies. Next one, the directorship restrictions. Individuals associated with willfully defaulting companies, including current and former directors, face the prohibitions on holding the directorship positions in other companies, and this measures actually aims to prevent them from potentially defaulting on their future obligations as well. Now moving forward, next two restrictions that they face is the business restriction. So they are prohibited from establishing new businesses for a period of up to 5 years from the date that they are actually declared as such, limiting their entrepreneurial activities as well as financial ventures. Next one is management changes. Okay, so financial institutions, they will actually have the authority to replace the management of the companies that have been declared, which are willful defaulters, aiming to protect the interest of the stakeholders and ensure better governance as well as to maintain a proper financial discipline. Next one is reporting to CIBIL. CIBIL is nothing but it is the Credit Information Bureau India Limited. Okay, so banks and institutions must submit the quarterly list of all the willful defaulters to the Credit Information Bureau India Limited, ensuring that all financial entities are informed and can take precautionary measures against such individuals and entities. Now moving forward, let us actually understand what is this framework that has been provided by the Reserve Bank of India. First one is identification as well as classification. That is, the framework involves an identification committee and also it has a review committee that actually ensure the borrowers are classified as willful defaulters only after they are subject to a thorough process of examination and opportunities for representation. Next one is reporting the requirements. That is, bank and financial institutions must report willful and large defaulters to the CICs, that is the Credit Information Companies, monthly, detailing both the suit filed as well as the non-suit filed accounts. Next one is preventive measures. Institutions again are required to closely monitor the end use of funds, conduct regular inspections on how these funds are utilized, and obtain certifications to actually prevent any kind of diversion of funds or siphoning. Okay. Next is they will be subject to penal measures. That is, it imposes the strict penalties on the willful defaulters that bars them from accessing additional credit and also prevents them from starting new ventures for specified periods of time. Next one, they are subjected to legal actions. We know the next one is guarantor liability. Here, the guarantors are held co-extensively liable for the defaults and can be classified as willful defaulters if they fail to honor the guarantees, and finally, transparency and fairness. The framework actually mandates transparent mechanism in order to, for the fair application of penalties and also minimize the discretion in the identification process. So this is entirely the concept of who are willful defaulters and what are the consequences that an individual or an entity face if they are actually tagged this willful defaulter tag. The next article that we'll be discussing about is option or stratagem. So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about what are the powers of the governor in order to refer bills or reserve bills to the President of India. And also later on, for the exam perspective, we'll also discuss about what are the powers of the President in case he's actually reserved or given a bill. So here we'll be discussing about what is the veto power of the governor, and also this particular topic is important, or it can be mapped to GS paper 2, constitutional provisions, issues and challenges pertaining to the federal structure. Okay. Now moving forward, there has already been a previous year question asked in the year 2015 in the prelims examination with respect to the posts of the governor and the judges of the High Court, the emoluments, allowances, etc. So all these constitutional posts as well as the functions that they are actually obliged to actually meet is very, very important for your prelims examination. Now moving forward, let us actually understand what this particular article is discussing about. So this particular article addresses the concerns about the governors in India who are actually believed to be delaying or obstructing the state legislation by withholding the assent or referring the bills to the president. Okay, so this particular intention of the governor of delaying the bill wantedly is actually being questioned by the state governments, and also this practice raises questions about the balance of power between the central as well as the state governments and the potential misuse of the constitutional provisions. Now moving forward, let us understand more about why and what has actually happened. So Supreme Court has actually intervened and it has ruled that the governors do not have veto power over the bills and must act on them as soon as possible. And particularly in cases involving Punjab, Tamil Nadu and the state of Telangana, the court emphasized that the governor's constitutional duty to promptly process the bills is very, very important. Next one, what are the current concerns? Here, despite the guidance or the intervention of the Supreme Court, the governors in the states of Kerala and West Bengal continue to delay the bills or refer them to the president in order to delay the passage. Okay. So, Kerala has filed a writ petition challenging the referral of the governor of the bills to the president, citing misuse of power as well as federalism concerns. Also, you can actually, bring in a concept of federalism as well as legislative autonomy over here. That is, these actions by the governors are believed to be influenced by the union or the central government, and this actually raises the concerns about undermining the autonomy of the state legislatures, and also it highlights the need for clear limitations on the governor's discretionary power in order to preserve the federal structure which is envisioned by the Constitution of India. So this you can actually, jot it down and make it as an important note about federalism as well as a Supreme Court intervention on the governor's misuse of constitutional power, okay, for writing an answer. Now moving forward, let us actually deal with the constitutional provisions relating to the veto power of the governor, okay. So, the veto power of the governor of India is primarily governed by Articles 200 and 201 of the Indian Constitution. According to Article 200, governor's veto power over the state legislation, it actually says that when a bill is passed by a state legislature and it is presented to the governor for assent, the governor actually has following 4 options. One is he can give the assent to the bill, that is he can approve the bill allowing it to become the law, or he can withhold the bill where he can refuse to approve the bill, effectively vetoing it, or he can actually return the bill where he can accept. In the case of money bill, the governor can actually return the bill to the state legislature with a request for reconsideration. And in case of the legislature repasses the bill with or without any kind of amendments, then the governor is actually obliged to give his assent. Next, he can also, apart from giving assent, withholding or sending it back to reconsideration, he can reserve the bill for the consideration of the president. Okay, so this is actually he can do especially if it is significant constitutional importance or if it conflicts with the laws of the union government. Okay, So these are the things. Now, if you see what are the veto power of the president over the state legislation, that is actually mentioned under Article 201 of the Indian Constitution, where when a bill is actually reserved by the governor for the consideration of the president actually has three options. One is give assent, where he can actually approve the bill and it becomes an act. Here, the assent of the governor is no longer required. Or the president can also withhold the assent, that is, he can refuse to approve the bill by exercising absolute veto, and this power effectively rejects the bill and it actually does not become a law. Or he can actually return the bill for reconsideration. That is, if the bill is not a money bill, the president can actually direct the governor to return the bill to the state legislature for the reconsideration, and this actually gives the president a suspensive veto. This is very, very important, okay? And here, if the state legislature again repasses the bill with or without the amendments and presents again to the president, then the president is actually not bound to give assent, just like how the governor did, thus maintaining the ultimate decision-making power. So that is why the state governments are actually concerned that if the governor actually reserves a bill for the president, since he actually has these veto power or the ultimate decision-making power, this actually hampers the concept or the principle of federalism. So now looking at this particular dimension of time limit, whether Indian Constitution has given any particular time limit for him to give the assent or not, the Indian Constitution does not specify a time limit within which the president must act on a bill reserved by the governor. And this actually allows the president to exercise a pocket veto, effectively delaying the bill indefinitely by not taking any kind of action. The next article that we'll be discussing about is dementia has two new risk factors. One is the untreated vision loss and the next one is high cholesterol, says the Lancet study. So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about the dimension of dementia, and we need to understand that it is not a particular disease, but it is the low cognitive function, okay? So here we'll be discussing about various health risk factors associated with it. And this particular topic can be mapped to both the prelims as well as mains examination, GS paper 2, issues related to health, as well as GS paper 3, awareness in the field of biotechnology. Now moving forward, if you see there has been a previous year question in the mains examination in the year 2018 where they had actually spoken about much of activity taking place in the field of biotechnology in the country and how India has actually benefited from the same. So any kind of diseases or what are the symptoms of it, the causes, India's measure to actually solve it, how it is related to achieving the SDG targets of good health. All this becomes very, very important for both your prelims as well as the mains examination. Now let us understand what this particular article is talking about. So the first one is untreated vision loss as well as high cholesterol are identified as the new risk factors for dementia according to the 2024 Lancet Commission. And these factors actually contribute to 9% of all the dementia cases. What are the factors? The untreated vision loss as well as high cholesterol. Now moving forward, if you actually see what have been the previously associated risk factors according to the 2020 Lancet Commission it was lower education level, hearing impairment, higher blood pressure, there was actually smoking, obesity, depression, physical inactivity, diabetes, excessive alcohol consumption, traumatic brain injury, air pollution as well as social isolation. So these were the risk factors associated with dementia. And added to that, it is actually now the vision loss as well as high cholesterol. Now moving forward, let us understand what is this particular term dementia mean. So dementia is actually not a single disease, but it is a general term which is used to describe a decline in the cognitive function severe enough to interfere with our daily life. So this encompasses a range of symptoms affecting the memory, the thinking as well as the social abilities that human beings exhibit. So the types of dementia, first one is Alzheimer's disease, which is most common form accounting for 60 to 75% of the cases, and it is characterized by tangles as well as plaques in the brain. The next one is vascular dementia. This actually results from conditions that block or reduce the blood flow in the body to the brain, leading to stroke or damage to the brain vessels. Next one is Lewy body dementia. This is actually marked by abnormal protein deposits that are called as the Lewy bodies in the brain. And the next one is frontotemporal dementia. This actually involves degeneration of the frontal as well as the temporal lobes of the brain. So everything is actually focused on the blood flow as well as the deposition of proteins, etc. on the brain. Okay, so this actually causes dementia. And the symptoms actually include the loss of your memory and difficulty in communicating or finding it, difficult to pronounce words. So also you'll have difficulty with visual and spatial abilities, the impaired reasoning or judgment, and there is actually often, frequent changes in the mood as well as behavior, as well as confusion and disorientation. Now moving forward, let us actually understand about this Lancet group, what it is. It is actually one of the world's oldest and most respected medical journals, which is known for its rigorous peer review process and high impact research publications. Okay, often you would have heard about this term Lancet study, which is mostly associated with health. And it plays a significant role in advancing medical science as well as public health. It was actually founded in the year 1823 by Thomas Wackley, who was actually an English surgeon. And the origin of the name, what does the name mean? It actually refers to a surgical instrument, or it also refers to that of a window, and this symbolizes the journal's aim in order to shed light on the medical knowledge as well as the practice. Now let us solve few prelims as well as mains practice questions. The first question reads, who is a willful defaulter? An individual or entity that is unable to repay loans due to genuine financial difficulties? No, this is wrong. An individual or entity that intentionally avoids repaying loans despite having the financial ability to do so? Yes, this is correct. So here the answer is very direct. Since statement B is actually the right option, the answer is option B. Now moving on, the second question reads, consider the following statements. Untreated vision loss and high cholesterol have recently been identified as new risk factors for dementia. Yes, this is correct as per the Lancet Commission 2024. Next one, vascular dementia results from conditions that block or reduce the blood flow to the brain. Yes, this is actually correct. Next one, lower education levels and hearing impairment are not considered the risk factors for dementia. This is actually wrong. So since statements 1 and 2 are correct, the correct answer will be option A. Now moving on, the third question reads, consider the following statements regarding the veto power of the governor and the president over the state legislations in India. The first statement is, under Article 200 of the Constitution, the governor has the power to withhold the assent to a bill, return it to the state legislature for reconsideration, or reserve it for the president's consideration. This is actually correct. The second statement is, the president must act within a specified time frame on a bill reserved for his consideration by the governor under Article 201. No, there is no such time frame mentioned. So since only statement 1 is actually correct, the answer will be option A. Now moving forward, the fourth question reads, which of the following describes the suspensive veto of the president over the state legislation? First one, the president can permanently withhold assent to a bill, preventing it from becoming the law. This is actually wrong. The president can return the bill to the state legislature for reconsideration, but if repassed, the president retains the power to withhold the assent. This is actually correct. So since option B is actually correct, the answer will be option B. Now moving forward, match the following. We need to match the type of landslides with the description. So looking at this particular image, what do you mean by topple? Here, the pieces of cliff or the rock face fall towards a larger rock. This is actually correct. So 1 is actually C. So since 1 is C over here, then you can actually match the rest of it together. So 2 will be B, where the earth flow can be matched to, which is formed on moderate slopes when fine grained material liquefies and runs on the hourglass shape. And 3 will be A, rockfall is gravity, which actually sends the rocks and the other materials tumbling down slope. Then finally, creep will actually be D. That is soil and the surface material that slowly moves down a slope. So since 1 is actually C, the answer will be option A. Now moving forward, let us actually solve the mains practice question. The question reads, discuss the challenges surrounding the senior care in India and suggest comprehensive measures in order to enhance the welfare of the elderly citizens. So, the approach to this particular question can be, or it is broken down into 3 parts, that is the introduction, the body and the conclusion. So, towards the introduction, we will actually highlight the significance of enhancing senior care in India amidst an aging population. And in the body, we'll discuss about the challenges that they face with respect to that of healthcare services, with respect to the economic insecurity as well as the social isolation. And we need to, mention the suggested measures like recommend expanding the health insurance, strengthening the social security and building the age-friendly infrastructure. And while concluding the answer, we need to conclude by emphasizing the need for a holistic approach in order to improve the welfare of the elderly citizen, ensuring their health, their security, as well as inclusion in the society. So with this, we've actually come to the end of our daily news analysis discussion. For more such videos, please do like, share and subscribe to Narayana IAS Academy YouTube channel. Thank you.